This video has been sponsored by Brilliant. Stick around to figure out how you can use Brilliant to learn math, science, and more, all at your own pace. Everyone in college has seen the memes about business econ exams being coloring books. I always thought these were an exaggeration, but after taking an upper-level economic statistics course at my university, I can safely say that comparison doesn't fully capture the absolute extent of the brain rot. If you remember from the astrophysics video, by the start of my junior year, I'd already finished my major requirements, with the exception of some elective credits. I discovered that I could take graduate school courses to satisfy these elective slots, so by the time I entered my senior year, I'd finished a good portion of the graduate school curriculum as well. In spite of my previous track record for academic masochism, however, I decided against taking 4 graduate school courses in one semester, and left one of those slots for a statistics class. Now, if you're not a physics major, this might seem like an obvious choice. After all STEM majors need statistics to run their experiments, but I assure you that this isn't normally the situation with physics. I'm being a bit sarcastic here, but it's less important what you observe in physics, and a lot more important what you think you observe. For example, if you take this data, what does it look like to you? I think most people would say that it looks like maybe Shrek sneezed into a napkin, but a physicist sees this. Data is a very fickle thing in the hands of a physicist. In fact, the smartest of physicists can mold the very fabric of reality to their will, like some sort of omniscient being. I once worked for a particle physicist and produced a graph of our experiment data that looked roughly like this. Pretty clear logarithmic trend, but there were 2 notable outliers. When I showed him the graph, he squinted at it for a couple of seconds before telling me to remove those points. I protested, but he, in his immeasurable wisdom, described this procedure as simply normalizing the data. That exact plot went on to be presented at one of the largest particle physics conferences in the world. Anyways, it's fairly uncommon for physicists to bother themselves with silly things like experimental design and academic honesty, but occasionally you'll find statistics rearing its ugly head in my perfect world of imaginary particles and invisible fields. To prepare myself for this inevitability, I enrolled in the first statistics class I found where the course reviews weren't telling the professor to off themselves. By the first class, however, I realized I'd made a mistake. Although the registrar had described the class as a formal treatment of introductory and intermediate statistics concepts, I realized that this was a biz econ statistics class. I'm not sure if this is the case everywhere, but my school has special classes for each subject for its special needs, its econ students. So instead of getting geometry, for example, you would get this. In a related point, I should have probably known not to trust the registrar's office. These were the same people who had forgotten to let me pre-register for classes since they thought I'd already graduated. There's no excuse for this because this is a full 6 months after I'd sent them an email telling them that I was no longer graduating in 3 years. They'd also let me register for a theory of algorithms class that didn't exist. The day of the first class, I got an email from the professor telling me that she'd retired last year and wasn't even aware that her class was still being offered. Regardless, my point about econ majors was proven when the entirety of the first week proved to be a review of Calculus 1. One of the slides from that week had this graphic, and we were asked which one of the graphs had a shaded area of 1. It took 4 answers for someone to get the correct solution, which was wild considering there were only 3 options on the screen. That same class, the professor was describing how to do an integral of x times a function of x. A student proceeded to tell, not ask, the professor that we could take the first x out of the integral because it was a constant. When the professor tried to correct the student interrupted and said, no, the x is constant because f of x is changing. So x is constant in comparison to f of x, so we can take it out. This bickering went back and forth for nearly 5 minutes until the professor eventually told the student to meet him after class, presumably to take him out behind the math department building and put him down for being a troglodyte. Now, if you don't want to liquidate your brain like the average biz econ major, I should tell you about this video's sponsor, Brilliant. Unlike my stats lecture where I had to wait for my classmates to remember the difference between multiplication and division, with Brilliant you can control the pace of your own learning. With its huge variety of lectures made by award-winning professors from places like MIT and Caltech, you're sure to find something useful for your own life with Brilliant. I'm a big fan of their new Modeling with Multiple Variables course since it covers topics that my class didn't, but if you're new to data science, their Introduction to Probability course is another great resource. The bite-sized modules in these courses are easily digestible, allowing you to learn a new topic even if you only have a couple of minutes per day. So if you want to stop watching Skibbity Toilet Sigma edits and do something productive with your free time, you should give Brilliant a try. It's never too late to start learning. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/storytime or click on the link in the description and pinned comment. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. With that, back to my complaining about econ majors. Now, you might think I'm being a bit harsh here in my criticism, but I want to remind you that this is a class of college sophomores and juniors. There are 20 to 21-year-olds asking these questions. The very same people who are going to be working in banks and hedge funds managing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars within the next 2 years. For one, I think it's incredible that we don't have a 2008-style market crash every financial quarter. Like, oops, little Timmy, who got into university because his dad's a professor, is too lazy to actually figure out how much money is in our accounts, so he just uses a random number generator. You know, like, that's a crazy idea.
Hey, Jeff.
Huh?
Blah, 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 blah.
They did what?
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so I've just been informed that this has in fact already happened. Specifically, FTX used to use a random number generator to say how much money was in their insurance fund. Send them all to jail. This is insane. Anyways, after the first couple of classes, I thought my classmates were a bit goofy, but that was it. Statistics was looking like just another filler class that I'd have to slog through in order to graduate. That is, until I started working on the problem sets. For some reason, the professor insisted on having 2 problem sets a week, each of which was a minimum of 8 pages and required to be fully typeset in LaTeX. This was pretty excessive, especially since each question was pretty much just a copy and paste of the previous one with a couple of numbers switched out. Not bad, but mindless busy work. At least, this is what I thought until I got my first assignment back. Now, before you burn me at the stake for sneaking math into your YouTube Shorts brain rot doom scrolling session, I promise this isn't that bad. According to my calculator, 781 divided by 1024 is this number. So when I report the number, I write down 0.762 ... where the ... implies that there are more numbers that I'm not reporting. Now, you might be wondering, why is Jeff talking about something that everyone learned in middle school? Well, apparently my stats professor went to middle school in Chernobyl because he insisted on taking off 5 percentage points because I didn't write this. And before you say that he might have just made a mistake, he didn't just do this once. He did this again for the next 2 P sets. Unfortunately, this set the tone for the rest of the semester. After taking the mandatory quiz at the beginning of each class, I spent the rest of the time fighting to stay awake as the professor introduced summation notation to students who were thinking about what color glue they should drink. I'd spend the next hour or so typing up all the P-set solutions, only to get my grade back and see that I'd lost another 5 points over some pedantry like not being able to follow the professor's inane rounding scheme. Rinse and repeat twice a week for the entire semester, and you have a recipe for regressing your cognitive development to a rhesus monkey. By the end of the semester, my brain had been sanded down to such a pristine smoothness that you could have stuck a plunger on it. Since I was preoccupied with grad school applications, I walked into my final exam with at most 2 hours of preparation, praying that I'd be able to cruise through on my well-polished cranium. I felt pretty good afterwards, but when I got my scores back the next week, I learned that I'd actually gotten a 78% before the curve and dropped my grade to a 92.5%, right below the cutoff for an A. This was less like karma and more like divine retribution. I'd spent the entire semester joking to my friends about how goofy this class was, only to score in the bottom third on the final exam. Imagine the tortoise and hare story, except the hare got run over by a semi-truck at the finish line because it was making fun of the tortoise. Entirely deserved on my part, I will not doubt that, but man did it suck having an A- in the easiest class I'd taken at this university.
Anyways, what's up, dudes and dudettes? Remember to like and sub this video so you can know about my next video where I'm reviewing my super glue stick tier list. Is Avery's the original glue stick a good alternative to the OG Elmer's disappearing purple, or will the king continue to reign supreme? What do I think about scented glue sticks, man? Are they as good as the Goldman Sachs boys have been telling me they are? Or are the Morgan Stanley kids right that they're absolutely not a substitute for the real thing? What's up? Oh man, I gotta go buy some Zids and Busch Light for this party. But stay tuned, guys. You don't want to miss out on this.